Good afternoon, Parle. It's lovely to see you, part of our Gujarati Influences project. The date today is 5th of July 2020. I want to start with your childhood. I want to understand your background. Where were you born? And just tell us a bit about your childhood.
So I was born in northwest London, of course, the Gujarati capital of London. I was born in Harrow, Northwick Park, um, but we lived in South London, so South London is home in that sense. And I've had a bit of an unconventional upbringing compared to most people in this country because we lived here in South London, but we moved away to Australia as well. So I think I must have been about 7 years old when I moved away to Australia from here, South London. And then I spent 6 years growing up there. And then we moved back here to the UK, back to South London. Yeah, that's probably like my story in terms of geography.
Would you say your upbringing was typical Gujarati?
Yeah, of course. I feel like it doesn't matter where you go and where you live, that Gujarati backbone, as I say, that we will have, it remains. And I feel like it was more Gujarati than most people because when you live in London and you have like there's a huge Gujarati community here in London. When you have that and you go somewhere like Melbourne in Australia where there was 2,000 Gujarati families in all of Melbourne, there's this paranoia that your parents have that, they're going to lose culture, you know, by they I mean me and my brother. So my parents had that paranoia that, we're in a country with less Indians, less Gujaratis. There's this risk that we're taking. How can we make sure that they have Gujarati in them and understand like what our culture is, what our values are. So my mum became a volunteer at a local Gujarati school, the only one in all of Melbourne. And naturally, when your mum's a teacher, you have to go. There's no option of not being a part of the Gujarati school. So I think quickly I was introduced to how vast Gujarati culture is, but what it is as well, from formally like learning, like, our Gujarati alphabet, to also understanding how different we are as British Gujaratis compared to, Australian Gujaratis, and of course, understanding heritage as well, because we're East African Gujaratis here in the UK. But the irony of it all being that being born in northwest London, like it remains a part of you. It's a stamp that's in your identity because naturally you can go anywhere in the world, and if you're Gujarati and you mention London, then Wembley or Harrow and Leicester quickly become a part of that conversation. So yeah, it was interesting to see, and it was very it was like, so all of this was served to me very young. So I was about 7 or 8. So most 7-year-olds don't need to sort of grasp culture and like even just look at it like this. But obviously, my parents had that special circumstance that me and my brother aren't surrounded by that many Indians or Gujaratis or Hindus. There's that paranoia. So they formally made us learn about all of that young.
How did you feel as a child being Gujarati in a different society like in Britain or in Australia?
I feel like being Gujarati, the sort of commonalities that Gujaratis have everywhere around the world, like the diasporic community, like the ones that have moved out of Gujarat, is we quickly adapt and blend into whatever our surroundings are. So we're not like a community that feels a special need to stick out or a need to differentiate themselves. Oh, that we are Gujarati, we are different. We're not like that. We're very much a community that can sort of just blend in. And if questioned who we are, then we answer. If interrogated or sort of asked that, what community do you come from? Then it becomes important to be like, we're Gujaratis, we're like this, we're like that. But that was the most interesting thing to me because, other Indian communities can be very different. They could be much more sort of, I would say, frontline about, their identity. They could be more I don't want to say proud, because I feel like Gujaratis are proud, but they could be much more sort of wearing their, you know, their identity on their sleeve, whereas Gujaratis sort of blended in. But that wasn't to say that we weren't distinct. That hardworking ethic and that sort of business acumen, and you know, there's one thing that I find really interesting is that my parents' generation, they always worked hard and always looked for opportunity, and that was to better themselves, to provide better opportunities to my generation, and just to help us out of hardship. That was their aim of coming here and moving to the UK, and, you know, giving us a better opportunity, a better education, more chances. But my generation still have a lot of that in us, even though it isn't required. So I feel like my generation don't actually need to have a second business, yet they'll still do it. So, you know, they'll be successful doctors or dentists or lawyers or accountants, but they'll have a cupcake business, or they'll have something else that they're doing on the side. And I always ask them, I'm like, why? You make enough money as a doctor, you know, your children are in good education. There is absolutely no need for you to do extra work. Why are you turning your hobby into a business? It's not a money thing. It's not a greed thing. It's not a they're bored thing, but it's that zest of success and seeing projects turn into, you know, successful things. So I think that has remained, that sort of identity has remained in all of us. And I think it always will. I feel like even if we forget the Gujarati language, even if we forget, you know, principles of like our religion, whether we're Hindu Gujaratis or Muslim Gujaratis or whatever, that sort of business acumen and that success culture is a big part of being Gujarati. Well, whatever field you're working in.
How did your parents end up in Britain? Are they from East Africa or?
Yes, so mum and dad had a little bit of an unconventional route to the UK. So when the expulsion happened in Uganda and there was a big scare in all of East Africa for Asians, a lot of people came from Africa straight to the UK. They were invited here, and, you know, they had the right because of the British passports that they held. However, ironically, my mum and dad had a different situation. My mum's grandfather worked for the British Embassy, and he was adamant that they went back to India first and lived there for a while. So even though they could have come straight to the UK, he was like, no, I really think you need to go back to the Gam, the village, and learn about life in rural India, so you can say that, you know, you've lived your culture. So my mum went back to India, I think for 13 years, and my dad had a similar story. So he went back to Gujarat, I think at the age of 10. They lived there for about 11 to 13 years, I think, and then they came to the UK. So growing up, it's been interesting to have friends that are, you know, East African Gujarati. And, you know, they have a very, very sort of weak relationship or understanding of where they're from in India, because they're East African Gujarati. They have much more of a connection to Africa and Kenya and, you know, Kenyan Gujarati cuisine, or, you know, East African Gujarati cuisine. And then, of course, I have Indian Gujarati friends who probably came, their parents probably came in the 80s maybe or 90s, and they've got a different culture as well. You know, the language is different, food is different.
That explains your connectivity with the Gujarati heritage, because I think of your parents having stayed in India.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to mine, because my parents also were from Africa. They went to India first and then India. And I can understand where you're coming from, because it's so important.
It is, and I feel like they got a little bit of a cultural lifeline. So it'd be like, here's your last chance before you move to a country that's even more different to Africa. Because, you know, Africa and India, climatically, they were similar. Lifestyle was quite similar. Women didn't work, men worked. You know, the kind of jobs people did were similar to India in that sense. So before they came to Britain, they got that lifeline that go to India, live there, see what you are really escaping before you move to the UK. And I feel like that helped them when they moved to Australia as well. So as a family, when we went there, I think the first thing that I noticed straight away, I'm like, why do they speak like that? Why do they speak like that? And then my mum would explain, it's because we speak Kenyan Gujarati. Our Gujarati is slightly different. But then there's been instances where they've been like, our Gujarati is not actually Kenyan Indian. It's actually an even rarer dialect. It's about 10,000 Gujaratis who moved from Africa back to India, went through a purification process, and then it's landed here in the UK. So it's not quite African Gujarati, it's not quite Indian Gujarati. It is this unique Gujarati that sort of only exists, I would say, here in the UK, and from my understanding, in certain pockets in America, in like California, Chicago, where there's that half and half community that, yep, they're African, but they moved back to India, and then they moved wherever they're going next, yeah. And it's helped me as an artist, because when it comes to language, if I get a script that says, we want you to be a British Gujarati auntie, then I can literally say that, do you mean with that Kenyan twang? Or do you mean with the Indian Gujarati twang? Yeah, so it's a lot of fun having that sort of inbuilt in me from mum and dad.
So your progression into the arts industry, there must have been certain early influences, like you might have been taking part in community productions. How
100%.
did that interest come up?
You see, when you're young, you don't realize you have interest in certain things. You are just the way you are, isn't it? So sometimes someone needs to push you into something. Not all kids will say that I want to be this when I grow up or that when I grow up. But I naturally always had an inclination to entertain people, whether it was through public speaking, whether it was through theatre, dance, music making, anything. I just liked people pleasing and entertaining, and that's something that my parents saw naturally in me. Now, whether they had different plans for me, in the Gujarati school that I was learning at, the teachers quickly realized as well that, my gosh, this 7-year-old boy has this sort of natural ability that if we push, and we can really have fun with it. And I could speak Gujarati really well. Obviously, kids in Australia didn't have that same surrounded by their grandparents. Their grandparents might still be in India or that sort of thing. Whereas I grew up with my bandada, my grandparents here as well. So I had this strong Gujarati speaking ability, and pair that with, someone who says that, okay, we need someone to do a comical role, or we need someone to do a little community natak, theatre production for Diwali or a festival. It worked well for me because I like to do it, and I had that little opportunities. But those opportunities, those early sort of, kind of like when you're still young, that is what gives you the best training, because you understand the essence of how to entertain well. And I suppose that's how I got into all of this from quite a young age, 7 or 8.
Let's jump a little bit to your YouTube journey.
Mm-hmm.
Your YouTube channel,
Yeah.
Planet Parle. Where did this word planet come from? And
So I was at university, so I somehow convinced my parents that I want to study broadcast media. Now, luckily, it was a BSc and it was School of Engineering, so that convinced them enough, because when they quickly skimmed over the flyers, they saw engineering and like an engine on the front cover of the brochure. So to them, they were like, it looks legitimate. It doesn't look like media studies or the arts or sociology. No, I mean, they were never against those subjects, but obviously, like all parents, they're going to worry. And around me and my cousins and family, friends, whatever, everyone was doing, law, dentistry, one of the solid academics. So for me to convince them, I had to do something similar. And it worked out really well for me because I learned a lot on that course about how to produce content technically. But the name Planet Parle came about because I wanted to, at university, 2009, 2010 is when the digital revolution began to happen. Faster internet, we were watching videos on our phone, YouTube was picking up, Facebook was picking up, social media revolution was happening, and you were seeing more and more people making videos on the internet. But I quickly realized that there was a lot of videos about growing up Indian or growing up Pakistani or growing up Asian or growing up brown, but the nuances of being Gujarati were invisible. It just didn't exist. Being Hindu just didn't exist. The narratives were focusing more on North Indians, Punjabis, Muslim communities, even South Indian communities as well. So there was this big hole, and it really sort of confused me, because my understanding was that Gujaratis are everywhere in the world, so why has someone not made a channel? So again, it comes back to that typical Gujarati business acumen, not only business acumen, but success acumen, that, hold on a minute, we should be doing something in this space as well. We should be creating content on the internet as well. So I must have been speaking to my mum about all of this, and in typical Gujarati spirit, she was just like, well, what are you doing about it? If you're not doing anything about it, then you can't really complain. So I said, fine, then I'm going to do my own channel then. And then the name Planet Parle came about because there was this big trend on the internet where the artists would use their first name and put world in. So they would be like, you know, Parle's World or so-and-so's world. So, you know, if there was a creator called Raju, it would be Raju's world, that sort of thing. And I never understood. I'm like, I don't like this world idea. I want to do something different. So I thought, why not a planet? So it's sort of like a landing spot where people can come in, enjoy, escape, connect with comedy, culture, arts, entertainment, current affairs, taboo topics. And then when they've had enough, they can get back on their spaceship and continue. So that's where the name Planet Parle came from.
A lot of your videos reflect life of Gujaratis in Britain.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever been accused by people that you make fun of Gujaratis?
Yeah, I have, but I don't feel like it's been that much of an issue. It may be 1 in 1,000 people might feel sad or offended. Maybe, like, I feel like this is another great factor of Gujaratis. If you tell a Gujarati person this is what you're like, in true Gujarati spirit, they'll turn around and be like, ha, ameva cheer. Like, yes, that's exactly what we're like. We're not a community that gets offended and things like that. But of course, some people, you know, naturally, comedy is very subjective, and, you know, these are very outrageously ridiculous sketches on the internet. So you take this video and you play it to someone who's disconnected from this sort of content, they're gonna find it offensive. But what's been really interesting is people in the beginning get offended. 3-4 years down the line, they've switched and be like, no, we understand that you're doing a tremendously positive thing about, you know, encouraging the younger generation to take interest in Gujarati culture. And for every hour that you've given to comedy, you've given 4 for music or dance. So they can clearly see what my grand plan is or how I want to contribute. So most of the times there's no problem. But obviously there's always 1 or 2 people.
But I think I've realized that the beauty of your videos is that you have engaged not only the youngsters but also the older generation.
Yeah.
The masses as well. They quite like it, even though you're making fun of them and everything. And do you ever talk to your parents before an episode, or when you come up with stories?
Now all the time. Yeah. In the beginning, it was really my thing, but now I have to consult them all the time, because there'll be certain words I don't know how to say, or, you know, I will want some sort of authenticity or just some sort of opinion. And I feel like my mum and dad are both fantastic at this, and it comes from what they did. My mum used to take part in theatre shows in Gujarat all the time, just in school, and she was a folk dancer herself as well in Gujarat as well. And my dad was that uncle who filmed everything, all the weddings, all the community events. So I had that natural sort of connection from them. So I will ask them a lot of the times, what about this, what about that? And yeah, they give me a lot of ideas. And I think it's a good point that you've made, that a lot of aunties or that older generation watch the videos as well. Because when I wrote the characters, I always said to myself that I don't want it to be a character that people watch, laugh at, and then dislike. I want them to be characters that people love for their ridiculousness. So whatever the character's like, in the end, you love them for who they are. And it's almost a bit of a power play my character of Kokila Ben that I do, over the years, they've become their own entity that people love, that people respect. And I get a lot of messages from people saying I'm exactly like her and I'm proud to be like that. And I'm like, well, that was the aim. There was never a sort of, we behave like this, we should be embarrassed. It's sort of like, we behave like this, let's reflect on who we are, let's laugh, let's move on, let's celebrate. So it was like that. So yeah.
So how did Kokila come about?
Kokila Ben was written in a coffee shop. I must have gone into central London and I made 1 or 2 videos, and I must have just ad-libbed on the spot, just like a sketch type thing, and I used the name Kokila, and then the comments quickly went crazy. I mean, this was really, really early, no Gujarati content on the internet. Like, there was nothing. It was maybe 1 or 2 silly little clips, but there was nothing. So people were going crazy. They're like, oh my God, he used that name. It's like the most, typical auntie name ever. Everyone knows the Kokila Ben, everyone knows the Kokila Masi. And I'm like, I need to make this the name of the flagship mother character. And then at the same time, I was seeing a lot of videos of other Asian communities where they would have a mother character and a father character. And the father character was always the stronger character, and the mum was what we would say in Gujarati, dabai gaili, as in sort of squashed, sort of pushed to the side, or didn't do much, was a bit of a housewife and that thing. And in my experience growing up, most of the women in our family were matriarchs. Yes, the man ultimately makes all the decision, but it's not without solid influences of the mum. And that's been a great sort of, it's been a great moment of pride for me to understand that and be like, hold on a minute, there's always these headlines in the news that, Asian women are oppressed and this sort of thing. So I was like, I'm not going to do that to this character. I'm going to do it the other way around. I'm going to make her strong, bold, outrageous, outspoken, and then have this funny, soft side that you see every now and then in the videos as well. So yeah, that's how Kokila Ben was born, in a coffee shop. I wrote this. I sort of brainstormed and sketched out what she would look like. And again, like, she doesn't cover her hair or anything like that. I mean, North Indian women, Punjabi ladies, they usually cover their hair. Muslim women, they wear the hijab. That's a part of their culture. I've not seen Gujarati women do that ever. If they're Gujarati and Hindu, like what I wanted to write. So I was very adamant to make sure that she might wear a dupatta around the house, but not cover her hair, just to really differentiate that. Yes, we are similar, but we are different as well. So that's how that character was born. Yeah.
Also, the gossipy storylines of when Kokila Ben is talking to somebody on the phone, and it's quite hilarious, I have to say. But have you found that it actually reflects what the Gujaratis are like,
I feel like we do a lot of things subconsciously that we don't realize that we're doing. People will always, nobody wants to be a gossip. Nobody wants to hold a flag and be like, I'm the best gossiper. I know all the news. I know everything that's going on. But people do talk. People do gossip, and they do it without realizing. And that I created a series with Kokila Ben and Jitu, mom and dad characters, that was called Apda Kitla, which translates roughly to, what's it to us? Like, how much is it to us? And I called it that because I wanted to show that people will gossip and gossip, but really it's meaningless. At the end of the conversation, they're like, well, we're not gaining anything from this. We're not losing anything from this. We're just talking. We're just having a general chat. So yeah, I'm going to be honest. I think people do gossip. It's not just that Gujaratis gossip, but I wanted to show that nuance in my videos in Gujarati, in our language, because it's not shown, but it's sort of like Dot Cotton on EastEnders, where she's like, I'm not the one to gossip, but then she'll start gossiping. It's the same thing. It's not just Gujaratis do it, but I wanted to show it in a Gujarati light. And I think that's why the character's been successful independently, because it's not just everyone watching her as my mum or from my perspective. You hear her perspective so much, her opinions on what's going on in the news, her opinions on what's going when she goes vegetable shopping, her opinions on, the prices of certain things going up and down. So that's why it's worked.
Mm-hmm. So obviously the YouTube thing really was a groundbreaking thing for you, which opened up lots of other opportunities
Yeah.
for you, and you started traveling a lot. And how do people in Gujarat view your videos?
As in their opinion on them, or
Uh,
they tend to enjoy them. And I think a lot of Gujarati artists had a little bit of a wake-up call, not just through my videos, but through videos anyone here in the West is making on Gujarati content or culture, because they felt that, hold on a minute, you know, we've become so Bollywood crazy in India that we've not even looked at what's going on in the house. We're in a rush to put our shoes on, get out, and make it in, you know, Hindi content or English content, but we've not sat here and gone, what's going on in our homes in our language, Gujarati. So a lot of the times, I very early on, I got a lot of kind of opportunities to speak at literature festivals or on the news, where they were really pleased to see, you know, in their headlines an NRI speaking about all these things and just doing stuff in Gujarati. And a lot of the times people would think I was born in India, and I would have to tell them, never lived in India, traveled there lots, enjoy going there, but very proud to also be British and Gujarati, because yes, we are very similar, but we're also distinct as well. So it's nice. And I feel like they like to see it, because they see a lot of NRI representations in films where, you know, someone marries an NRI or they go there to work, but they don't see it authentically from an NRI. So like, I feel like they've enjoyed that aspect of seeing it from an actual NRI's perspective. So yeah, it's received really, really well.
Can you talk a little bit about the method? You were just explaining that you did the videos right at the beginning. So it became your own way of broadcasting your sketches and everything. Can you explain a bit like this?
As in how I started making the videos?
Yes, exactly.
So the videos started very, very simply. I had a camera lying around in the house. Obviously, I learned about how to film and light at university, and I quickly just put it on a tripod, started making sketches, and I learned very quickly that you can't just put a camera on and do funny things. You need to like have an idea planned and script things and, you know, write ideas and whatever. So first things first was that I had to realize, when do I get creative? So that was at night time. So I would always have to keep like a notepad or a book or something, like pen and paper nearby, especially bedtime. And any idea I get, I would scribble it down. Sometimes halfway through my sleep, I'd wake up and just scribble it and read it the next day and be like, what were you thinking? Then I translate that into a nicer script. And then when I'm filming, it turns into something. Like, you know, once I've filmed it, it turns into something. But now it's much more of a formal process. I have, you know, proper lighting equipment. I have tripods on wheels, microphones. I have people who help me shoot, people who help me edit, people who review my content, things like that. So it's different, but the essence of how I come up with the idea is very much the same. You have to be ready for when you get an idea to write it down and develop it. And you know, you might get 70 ideas in a day, but maybe 3 of them are good.
So it basically started being a one-man show where you were doing everything, the creative idea, the script writing, the performing.
It still is. I would still say it is still very one man. I didn't want it to be one man, but for practicality, that's what it's been. So because it's just easier to access people, and a lot of the times I have worked with other people, and you know, there's certain projects that I do with Planet Parle that only work when I do it with other people. There's certain live sketches. I toured a small live sketch last year for wedding events and private events, and it was me and 3 other artists. So I could never do something like that just by myself. So their teamwork is important, and it wasn't just written by me. The sketch was penned by me, but then the jokes and characters were developed by the other artists that were taking part. But with Planet Parle, people really enjoyed that element, that he's the girl, he's the auntie, he's the uncle, he's the youngster, he's Parle. Oh my God, now he's on the screen all at once. how is there 7 of them eating dinner around a table? How is he changing his voice? So that became a part of the novelty. It's almost like the glue when you're doing any piece of art, because you have costume, you have dialogue, you have the characters, the setting. But to tie all of that together, when you have one person doing it, it becomes a novelty. And that's not something that I've made up. I've grown up watching, you know, Eddie Murphy doing it in films and gone, wow, like what a legend. How is he doing so many characters? And I'd be like, you know, there's a black gentleman doing an amazing job doing comedy on, you know, his community. Why isn't there an Indian man doing the same? So I suppose not all of my influences have been just Indian, like it ranges, but I've translated them into being, you know, British, Gujarati and Indian.
So from YouTube, as I said to you, lots of opportunities opened up for you, and you ended up with BBC Radio Network as a presenter. Tell us a bit about that experience.
So, growing up, I listened to a lot of radio as it is. I listened to a lot of BBC Radio as it is, and you know, they have phone-in shows and things like that. And I would regularly call in and things like that. So I was always aware of the network, and I looked up to a lot of the presenters. But radio is never sort of a world that I felt I could work in, purely because of it being very, very different to like video or theatre or television. It's very different as a medium. But I quickly got picked up, in fact. The first time the Asian Network picked me up was on a news story. They picked me up as a bit of you know, there's this person doing comedy videos in the Gujarati community that are very controversial. Not all Gujaratis are happy. So it was a negative story, and they called me in, and, you know, they said that, you know, there are some people that are very cross because you're making these videos, or what are your thoughts? And I said, well, you can buy a bunch of grapes and 3 of them will be black. If the rest, you know, as in they'll be rotten. If the rest of the grapes are healthy and edible, then I'm good to go. There's always going to be people complaining, and watch me out. You know, it's been 3 weeks since I've made videos and you're reporting the news. See what I'm doing and then come back to me. And that's what they did. They saw very quickly that actually his intention is to uplift Gujarati arts and make something out of it. So youngsters feel that, hold on, if I want to do something on being Gujarati, or I want to learn more about Gujarati music or dance or whatever, then I can do so. Not privately or in small niche groups, but out in the mainstream. And as with all radio stations, they have a big change up of presenters, and I was really lucky actually. I got an opportunity to just co-present with Alpa Pandya, who was the Gujarati presenter. And she had other plans as well. She'd been at the BBC for a long time, I think almost 8 or 9 years. So she was sort of looking, and you know, they would always ask, and it's that sort of industry, you don't know how to enter it, like you get lucky sort of thing. And they would always ask, would you present radio? And before I even asked that, I used to always say that I would love to work in radio, not as a presenter, but maybe as a producer or someone that does the editing, because I like all of that as well. They were like, no, we think you'd always make a good presenter, not a producer. So they did a big revamp of the language shows, and they said that we want to remove the Gujarati show and we want to put a new show in. It won't be a permanent slot, but it'll be a great opportunity for you to, you know, work in the world of radio and sort of contribute to the BBC as a presenter, and we think you do a fantastic job. Now my worry was I've never presented a day of radio in my life, no community radio, nothing, zilch. So there's a lot of presenters who have worked their socks off in, you know, hospital radio, university radio, community radio, have learnt the art because it is an art form. But they were like, don't worry about all of that, we'll train you up, and you know, we think you have a natural ability and your knowledge and passion for Gujarati culture and music and comedy is, you know, is really, really, really strong, especially for someone here in the UK of your generation. So yeah, I went into the studio and started presenting radio. It was incredible to just jump from YouTube to radio and learn about the difference of how different YouTube is and how different it is producing a radio show for national radio at the BBC.
And you met a lot of high-profile artists
Mm.
and all that,
Yeah.
so that must have been quite
Yeah.
a good experience for you.
It was, and it was also an experience for me to sort of argue my case a lot of the times with the BBC. They have a very limited understanding of Gujarati culture and the rest of that. So a lot of the times I would be writing to my editor saying that, you know, you need to let me interview this person because you don't know who he is, but he's in the UK, he's doing a show, he is very important to the community. And they would trust me because they knew, you know, that I would always be sort of very center grounded in my approach, and I would support artists of all different backdrops. So I would have an artist come into the BBC studio who can't speak English, and I would have to present a whole interview in Gujarati, which was a huge learning curve because radio Gujarati is very different to how you speak in the videos and things like that. And it was good because it was a wake-up call for me as well, in the sense that if I wanted to formally get into this, that I should learn about dialect and delivery and the rest of that in Gujarati. And I think that's where I really put my foot on the pedal when I was working in radio. So yeah, it was really good.
So let's talk a bit about your music production and your dance activities. You got this Raas Rebellion group together.
Yeah.
Why did you call it Raas Rebellion?
So I founded this with Pril Upadhyay, so she's a good friend of mine, and me and her both came up with the concept of Raas Rebellion. I feel like growing up at university, we would go to a Garba event during Garba season. We never quite understood why Garba was getting dull and boring and tired, because whenever we saw it in the films or on the stage, we were like, this dance is so full of energy. So why are young, fit and healthy people getting so tired and limp and lackluster? And why are the elderly people more energetic, you know? Like, what is it? Is it that you don't connect with the music? What is it? The music's lively. Anyone can walk into that room and hear the beat of that dhol drum, and you know, it's a folk dance. Folk music's very lively. So I'm like, something's missing here. There's something isn't working out. Either people think they're not allowed to be lively with it. Either people think that, you know, because it's a religious affair that you should behave, and there's all of these elements. So we were going to call it Raas Revolution. But then me and Pril both felt that, hold on a minute, there's been lots of revolutions. What we need right now is a bit of a rebellion, that we're going to do a dance production company, like organization, community, and we're not going to ever say that we do Bollywood and Garba, or we're a dance group and we do all of these dances and then we do a little bit of Garba as well, a little bit of, you know, like the tick box performance once a year. We're going to do purely just Gujarati folk dance. We're going to rebel against other dance forms. It's going to be purely Gujarati, and that's it. We got to work. We started reading books, started connecting with choreographers, asking elders about, you know, what is this? What are these dance forms? I was really lucky because I had mum who's done every single Gujarati folk dance you can name, from, you know, tribal dances to semi-classical folk dance, to pure folk, to, you know, male-only dances where the women dress up as men. So she really, really, really pushed me, encouraged me, and gave me that sort of support that you need to learn about these folk dances, because it was so limited. And I felt like that's the first thing that hit myself in Pril, that even if someone did want to start, where are they going to learn? There was just no pure Garba learning opportunities here. There was always Garba fusion and Bollywood with a touch of Garba, and, you know, let's just start dancing with dandiya sticks and call it Garba. But no one was like, let's look at this and understand it as an independent sort of world of dances. So that's why we called it Raas Rebellion, because we didn't, not that we wanted to disrespect these other dance forms, but we wanted to also pay homage to Gujarati dance. And it's worked beautifully, because there's been a whole renaissance. Bollywood have started now using Gujarati melodies and dance techniques and the rest of that. And the production within Gujarat is just through the roof now, you know, really high quality. And when I've met these directors, they've really turned to us and said that, well, it's people like you who are inspiring us. And to us, that's the biggest honor, because we didn't even know what we were doing when we started, let alone, you know, let's start a dance group. But we really wanted to do it to remind, you know, the younger generation, to sort of be creative with Gujarati arts. And
you also went back to your roots and traveled a lot in India,
yes,
in Gujarat
yeah,
particularly. Met people like Diwali,
yeah,
all of that. Tell us about that experience.
yeah, it was amazing. So I come from central Gujarat, Charotar, that's the region that I'm from in Gujarat. And I've always, before I even traveled around Gujarat, I always knew there was so many different, you know, styles of music, food, art, culture, language within Gujarat, but I'd never seen it. In fact, my mum and dad, they used to always joke. They used to be like, well, when we lived in Gujarat, the furthest that we went was to this point. We never like really had that privilege, opportunity to cross over to Saurashtra or Kutch or Surat or, you know, other areas. So it was really eye-opening for me just to see how vast Gujarati culture is. And it was so encouraging as well, because we came back here to the UK, and I was like, there's so much we can do. There's so many styles of music, and, you know, to meet someone as prolific as Diwali Patel and sit with her was mind-blowing as well. And also having my mum as a folk dancer in the house, to then, you know, have that moment of pride that, my God, I used to, you know, dance to this lady's songs, and you've just gone and met her and you've, you know, lived that experience. It was fantastic as well, because there's a true difficulty in collecting these folk and cultural, musical and heritage ideas. There's no one place you can go. There's no library or a book that you can read. It's not like with the classical arts, there's like a lot of books that you can read, a lot of training you can get from teachers. But with like anthropology and folk art and that sort of stuff, it's very, very kind of dotted around, and you really just have to speak to people and have conversations and travel and go to the village. So it was wonderful, yeah.
So what was the reason that Raas Rebellion was so successful? You explained at the beginning nobody of the younger generation thought it was boring.
I'll be honest with you, the reason why Raas Rebellion was successful, or is successful, is because we learned how to articulate and back up the significance of what folk dance is. My parents could do the same, my mum could do the same, but that's when you have a language barrier. Me being born in the UK, having English as what I would consider almost my first language after Gujarati, it gave me that privilege to really articulate in a way that connects to a younger generation, rather than having someone from the generation above saying that, you know, this is all important. They had someone that looks and sounds and talks like them telling them that, hold on a minute, we should collectively do something. So naturally, it's about how you serve the food on what sort of plate. So because we served it to my generation in that way, they all felt that, yeah, we need to do this. Now, that's not just Raas Rebellion, but there's a global resurgence, whether it's Punjabi folk music or whether it's classical dance. More and more youngsters are like, no, we need to preserve this and look into this. And, you know, behind the glitz and glamour of like commercial industries like Bollywood and things like that, there is a deeper, more significant and more rich sort of world of arts.
You said you presented it differently, but don't you think you also presented a different content?
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't want to give the answer, but...
No, we did. We were producing music in a very different way to how they produced it. And again, it comes down to knowledge. When I first started making Gujarati music, I had a lot of people going that, you know, this isn't traditional Gujarati music, you know, you're not traditional Gujarati music, that, you know, you've got all these electric instruments and all this and that and blah, blah, blah. So I said to them, I was like, give me an example of traditional Gujarati music. So they would come to me with a nice, beautiful track with some strings, with the harmonium, with the tabla. And I would always turn around and say to them, the tabla are a classical North Indian instrument. The harmonium is a French instrument. Strings is a Western classical instrument. What part of this music is traditional in your eyes? Traditionally, Garba was played on a dhol and a shehnai. Traditionally, there was none of these other instruments. So why do you call this traditional and what I'm doing not traditional? And then they quickly realized that it's going to be tough to mess with Parle and these lot because they've really done their reading and background knowledge. And we would be very sensitive in what we were presenting. So we would present a song. We released one song where we were using elements of trap music. So trap music is an American genre which has crazy bass lines and electronic sounds and things like that. But we presented a Gujarati song, and a lot of conservative, orthodox sort of people from the industry turned around and said, you've taken a traditional religious song and you've ruined it. And I'm like, okay, let's break this down. I understand that it can seem like, what have you done? You butchered this song, as they would see. But what part of this song is religious? Let's break down the lyrics. After breaking down the lyrics, there was zero religious significance in the song. I'm like, this is a folk song that you're using at a religious festival. A folk song has nothing to do with the religious festival. The song was written in the 70s by a composer. So we've just reinvented it. And if you listen to any Gujarati Garba album, 65 to 70% of the songs that they produce on the album are the same songs that they produce year in, year out, the classics. So we reinvented a classic. So I just said that what I'm doing is building a bridge with my generation and my heritage to encourage them to understand this as well. And then once they saw that I was producing more traditional music as well, they sort of understood.
So you think the Gujarati culture in the UK, you have managed to influence or change the community through your work?
Yeah, I feel like I have, not independently. I feel like it's been a collective effort, but I feel like I have influenced conversations, started conversations, got all Gujaratis across different ages and different backgrounds to sort of look at, what it means to be Gujarati, and why there's not a single right way to get involved, but there's different ways. And I feel like I know this because I see it in my comments when I'm doing content online, or emails people write me, or other organizations starting something and saying, you've inspired us or something like that. So I feel like it is there. But as I said, it's not just me, it's a global shift. The whole world is going through a little bit of a regional revival where more and more people are looking at regional or niche content. And that's because of how we now consume content. Before, it was only on the radio or the television or the newspaper. You watched a show when it was live. If you miss it, you've missed it. Now everything's on demand. You can watch your favorite show at 2 at night or whenever you want. So because you're in more control, because the audience is in more control, I feel like that's helped me as well.
And also what you were saying earlier about your the work you do with universities and bringing the youngsters. Before, nobody wanted to do Gujarati, but
people did want to do Gujarati, but it would be sort of like a tail end selection. So I feel like more people were like, well, what's there you can even do with Garba? Or they just didn't know there was so much fun you can have with this folk dance, or the varieties, or the styles, or the rest of that. I think a lot of people understood it as a religious affair rather than a creative affair. Not to say that it's not a religious dance form, but it is. It's a folk art. So people needed to understand it independently from a religious festival. It's a folk dance that we appropriate during a religious festival, but then we appropriate it during weddings. We appropriate it during any happy sort of time in our life. That being Garba specifically. So I think because we presented it in this new sort of, youth-centric way, more and more people were inclined to learn more and have fun with it. And then obviously, as the world was presenting more examples, it was more visible. I think that's been one of the biggest challenges, just bringing it out and showing people that, look, there is all of this to learn. And then that's built momentum over the years, yeah. So we're getting lots more youngsters taking interest, wanting to learn compared to before, which is great.
Talk a bit about Navratri, because I think that's where I first saw you many, many years ago. You were a little boy dancing away. And generally I feel that Gujarati youngsters associate with Gujarat more during Navratri, and then after Navratri is finished, it all goes.
Yeah, we say that the suitcase comes up, out, take it all out, the culture, and then when Navratri is gone, put it all back and put it away.
Yeah. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, to a good extent, I do. I feel like that's what we've been taught, isn't it? When else are you going to sing and dance about being Gujarati? If you ask anyone in the generation above your generation, you wouldn't. There is nothing else, is there? And I think that's what sort of led us to put on events outside of Navratri to celebrate Garba, or to celebrate folk dances, or to showcase folk dances and things like that. And all of a sudden, people were seeing, on our social media, us just having fun and in our costumes or rehearsing. And in the beginning, a lot of people would comment, but it's not Navratri, like, why are you doing all this now? And 5 years down the line, no one says that anymore, because they understand that there isn't a bracket in the year where you celebrate your culture and then you put it away. It doesn't work that way. And through our efforts of, translating Gujarati songs, or sort of sharing them, or creating groups and communities on social media and things like that, people are realizing that there's a lot of great Gujarati music that is thematically not associated with Navratri. So all of a sudden people feel that if this has got nothing to do with Navratri, why does it matter when I listen to this or enjoy it or consume it? So yeah, there's been this shift. It's still happening. It's still going to take a lot of work. But it's good to see that it's not just me who is pushing this idea, even in the films and things like that. People are they'll have a Garba song, but it won't be a Navratri event that the Garba song is in. So everyone's like, oh, why is it Garba now? But it's not Garba season, right? So this whole idea of Gujarati season or Garba season is something that has been a problem. It's still a problem, but it's fading. More and more people are understanding that it's not a seasonal thing, so yeah.
That's true. I think both of us were talking about your very impressive documentary, which we saw recently on BBC, about caste system, and I think it was quite an eye-opener. And with our project being about the roots and changes, how did this come about, this whole documentary?
So I think it's a given to Indians that we associate ourselves with a community, right? Caste is so complex. It's about the heritage, it's about the family you're from, it's about the profession you're in, it's about class. It's very, very vast. It's about your lineage and the rest of that. But it's presented itself as a problem in Indian and Hindi society as well. By no means is it a problem presented by the religion. There's been hundreds of scholars and saints and wise men and women from the Hindu religion that have clearly said that our religion doesn't teach our people to section society according to I'm higher than you and you're lower than me. But it still happens even now in India. So I think there comes a time where you kind of look at the community here in the UK, as we are Indians, to see, do these things still present a problem here? Is it a problem here? And if it is, what are we doing to change it? So for me, it was very eye-opening as well, because I might have had bits and pieces of discrimination, but not in the way that I had discovered that other people were having. And at the same time, caste has actually allowed so many people to hold on to their heritage, their ancestry, you know, their history as well. Many communities here still do what their, you know, ancestors did in India. And that's why we, you know, explored this, to see that, is it still a problem? And if it is, how is it a problem? And if it's not a problem, then what are the positives of this thing? And I think at the end of all of this, what you understand very quickly, it's not caste that's a problem, it's casteism that's a problem. Now that's not my own knowledge, that's something that Swami Chinmayananda, a very, very well-known Hindu sort of spiritual leader, said. And that's exactly it. It's when it becomes hierarchical, it possesses a problem to society. But really, it can be quite a beautiful thing, because there's countless Hindus in this country that, you know, like one of the examples in the film, Ekta, she comes from the Suthar community, the carpenter community. Today, she works as an interior decorator, and she still has the tools that her grandfather gave to her, and it's a big part of her identity and, you know, her sort of livelihood, the ceremonies that she takes part in as well. So it's important to Hindus, but I don't think we have a jumbo caste-related issue in this country. There are elements of discrimination that I came across, but I think in generally, like I said in the film, that we're in a bit of a hangover where there is elements of discrimination happening in society here in the UK, but overall, most Hindus just see their caste as a thing of the past, sort of like, well, it's our heritage. And whilst you can't escape the caste you were from, because, you know, that's what you were born into, your lineage, profession-wise, I think we're all doing all sorts of different things. And as there is a big interest in the Hindu religion amongst youngsters, they're realizing that the Hindu religion isn't actually linked to any sort of caste discrimination, but this is a man-made power system or an abuse of, you know, a verse from a scripture.
Was there any feedback when you broadcast this?
Yeah, of course, naturally. So like the biggest feedback that I got, majority of people were like, wow, something on television about Hindus, firstly, because there just doesn't seem to be much programming on Hindus. And part of the reason is that we're such an invisible community. If you think Gujaratis are invisible, then Hindus are a new level of invisible. Unless it's Diwali or one of our bright, colourful festivals, you won't see us on TV. That was the first thing. People were very pleased. And the second thing was that to most people, including myself, they didn't even realise it's an issue. People thought that, you know, this is something that happens in rural India and it's a very old, orthodox, backwards, and, you know, not forward way of thinking. But then there was also negativity around it as well, that, you know, you've made a programming to make Hindus look bad, and, you know, naturally people, it's a very sensitive topic. People are going to feel negativity that, you know, you've taken something very problematic. But my job as a presenter or a narrator is to start these conversations. Even if we had a 6-part series on caste, you could still not end the conversation there. It's a very, very deep topic. There's so many offshoot ideas and discussions that need to be had. So in a 39-minute film, am I going to have all the answers on caste? Absolutely not. I mean, one factor is the British Raj and how they sort of abused this idea of caste and like these groups. They said that, well, you know, we can use this to our advantage. That's the next factor I would like to look at. So I think I would say that 99% of the feedback was positive. So I'm happy with that. And I hope that more people question these things and look into them, because it can be a very nice thing to have your heritage. You know, I have neighbours who are born in this country, but they don't know further than their great-grandfather. Whereas for me, I know exactly what my ancestors were doing, you know, 900,000 years ago. And I think that's quite empowering. I think that's quite beautiful.
Are there any other issues which you feel should be brought out in the public conversations? Obviously, caste was one, and any other things,
you know,
Gujaratis, which you feel we should
I
discuss more?
feel like, generally speaking, we're a successful community, and if there is a community issue, we do come together. Recently, sadly, there was a young girl that had a rare form of cancer, and she needed a bone marrow transplant. And within days, a campaign was raised. There was people, giving their bone marrow DNA in temples and things like that. The Nizadan temple, the Somaran temple, they were offering, the collection of this, all sorts of temples. And it was fantastic to see that when someone in the community is in great trouble or hardship, we come together. So generally speaking, we're a very sort of problem-free community. And I say this as someone that comments on, our identity all the time. But I will say one thing: we need to be less shy about having talks about things like caste, heritage, patriarchy, domestic abuse. There might not be a problem that is visible, but we still should go fishing because it might be happening and we don't know. So until something comes to my attention, then I can't really see. I mean, there are the common issues, but one issue that I found out about recently, and I wouldn't have even known, is many people in the Gujarati community, especially because we're vegetarian, have a big thalassemia problem. A lot of people don't know about this, so that's one topic. And I feel like that one people will want to know about because it's health, life and death related. But yeah, apart from that, not really, no.
Somewhere, I don't know if you mentioned this, but I read somewhere about where I was reading about you, and you were saying that our Gujarati culture is under attack not from outsiders but from within our own people. What do you mean by this?
We tend to have this issue where we shut one another down within the community. So if someone is doing something new and interesting, it won't be outsiders saying that you shouldn't be doing this or you shouldn't be doing that. It's people from within the community. And it's under attack because we as Gujarati people haven't valued what our culture is, or we haven't given it the status it deserves. So other communities will put their culture first. For example, you go to a Punjabi wedding, you will hear only Punjabi music. You go to a Gujarati wedding, you'll hear every other type of music first, and maybe right at the end you might hear a Gujarati song. So you can see that as Gujaratis, we've not valued our own culture as we should, like other communities have. It is changing though, because people are, reflecting and realizing. More people are sort of saying what I'm saying, and I'm not the first to say this, but I'm probably someone who's done it in a way that is reaching more people. So that's what I mean by we're the ones that are putting ourselves down. So a lot of people in the beginning expected me to just do comedy, and I said, well, that would be a disservice because yes, we're a funny bunch of people, but we're also a brilliant bunch of people. Our music is rich, our arts are rich, we are successful, we blend in, we've got a lot to offer. So if we're laughing at ourselves with one hand, we should be celebrating ourselves with the other hand.
What do you think is a reason that the Gujaratis don't appreciate their own culture so much?
It comes back down to the history of Gujarat itself. Gujarat, unlike other states in India, is it was a little bit of a checkpoint for travellers. So you had lots of different communities come there, set up, do what they needed to do, and then they move on. And the last prolific community were the Gurjars. That's where the word Gujarat comes from, land of the Gurjars. There was a community. So because it's a bit of a melting pot of cultures, the culture its identity is very surface level to one extent. Whereas other communities in India have such a deep, vast and rich sort of history. It's like an anchor, It's really deep rooted, whereas Gujarati culture is a mixture of different ideas, and it's almost it does have an ancient history because India is an ancient land, but a lot of it's lost, or it wasn't impactful or remembered or passed down in the way other communities have. And politically as well, India, when India was formed, two of the founding fathers, Parle Patel, Mahatma Gandhi, also Gujarati, we're very quick to put India and the unity of India first. So amongst many Gujaratis, we will always do the same. We will always put India first. Even at home, my mum will always be like, yes, we're Gujarati, but we're Indian as well. And which is a nice thing as well. It shows that we're a universal community that are proud of, the diversity of what India is. But there comes a time where you have to understand, where did that pride come from? It came from that Gujarati spirit of putting the bigger picture first.
Our project talks about the roots and changes. Now, when you go back home to your village, you must have met a lot of your family members. And do you see that you have changed a lot from them? And if you were to go back in time, you feel Britain has given you that opportunity to come out in a positive way?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. I feel like here in the UK, we're in a time freeze with lots of things. So in India, they've actually moved, miles ahead, and we've done things still in a traditional way. But in other ways, they've remained, quite traditional, and we've moved forward in a lot of ways. For example, here at home, most Gujarati families still eat Gujarati food. You go back to Gujarat, more and more people tend to not eat Gujarati food every day, or they don't cook at home. Whereas here in the UK, it's pretty normal for, Gujarati homes to have fresh Gujarati food at least once, twice, 3 times a week. At the same time, because education has been served to us in such a wonderful way here, opportunities to earn well, become successful quickly are presented to my generation here. It also gives us the liberties to do whatever we want, whether it's to travel the world or start a business or do charity work or work in culture and arts that perhaps people in the village don't get to do. So they probably have to follow a much more formulaic route to success, whereas here we have that liberty. I always say that the only reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because I have the support of my parents. They don't need to worry because they know that we live in a country where there are grants and, government bodies and organisations like the BBC that I can find employment in. That isn't the situation back in India. So even if someone wanted to do what I'm doing, they have to concentrate on, earning a living rather than taking the risk that I have.
Can I, maybe a similar question. We have a title of our exhibition is Roots and Changes. Now we are talking about the changes within the Gujarati community. So for me it's very important to understand, do you think the Gujarati community has also changed this society? Or not, let's say the Indian community has changed the society, and what is your feeling about that?
100%. I think we've contributed to society in so many different ways. There's a big element of being Gujarati here in the UK, and that is the majority of Gujaratis here in the UK are Hindu. And you see a lot of Hindu ideas and sort of practices that are now being taken to the mainstream, whether that's things like yoga, Ayurveda, mindfulness. All of these ideas that are fundamentally Hindu are now being presented here in the West by Hindus, by Gujaratis. And I feel like non-Gujaratis are now, taking these ideas on. We've influenced the UK through our food, vegetarianism as well. Like I always say that the best thing about being a Londoner and a vegetarian is that we have so much choice as vegetarians. And part of the reason that has worked well for Gujaratis is because a lot of Gujaratis were traditionally vegetarian. And coming to the West and having a limited palette of, ingredients, they've become creative with what they have. But that has given them the ability to create fusion foods and things like that that are enjoyed by so many different communities now. So I think we've definitely influenced people. But I will also say that in the arts and the culture, that Gujaratis have taken a bit of a backseat. We might have influence through our business acumen and our food and our spirituality, but when it comes to like music and dance, then the Punjabi community have done a tremendous job at something like that. Or their sort of attempts have been more visible.
There's a big discussion about Black Lives Matter at the
Mhm.
moment. What is your take on that?
I think Black Lives Matters is one of those situations where it's a wake-up call for a lot of people. The whole idea of Black Lives Matter is not a new fight. It's not like this is just something that's happening now. It's much more of a sort of alarm bell that's ringing even louder. And I feel like it's ringing even louder because we've been globally in this pandemic. A lot of us have been at home. We have more time to reflect. And then when news of things like, innocent black people being murdered by the police are surfacing, we have more time to learn about the histories. So there's a lot of misunderstanding with what Black Lives Matter is. A lot of people think that, well, all lives matter, but that's exactly what Black Lives Matter means. They've had to create a campaign because they have not been considered in the bubble of All Lives Matter. So naturally they're going to have to, create a campaign called Black Lives Matters because they've not been, facilitated under All Lives Matter. So I'm very much for that. And when we look at racism around the world, in the UK, in the US, we have to understand that it presents itself as a problem in different ways for different communities. Yes, we are South Asian. Yes, we might have faced racism. Yes, my parents faced racism in terrible, terrible ways. But the systemic way that black people have faced discrimination, racism, and lack of opportunity is far greater than what, we have faced here in the UK. For example, we were invited to live in this country as not working class communities, but as business communities, as middle class people. That's a big difference to how the Windrush people were brought here. So we need to understand these differences. We need to put things like our arrogance and pride aside and look at it hands-on and let them tell their story. I wouldn't want someone telling my story of being a Gujarati because they wouldn't possibly know what to say because they've not lived it. So if it's their story and their experience, then we shouldn't be turning around and saying that, but what about this and what about that? It's not their issue, it's a world issue, but it's for them to tell and for us to understand and take action on. So I think that's it with Black Lives Matter. I've been making videos about it, and the best news is that 99% again of people are realizing that, actually, if you do the reading, if you read into the discrepancies of American society about the slave trade, about colorism, about police brutality, then naturally it's going to result in something like Black Lives Matter.
You've done a lot of things: acting, dance, music, radio presenting, YouTuber. What next?
Good question. If I'm honest with you, my dream is to see a really good quality television comedy drama on British Gujaratis. I feel like, we're really, really lucky here in the UK. We have, public broadcasting services like the BBC or Semi, like Channel 4, and, you've got Netflix now, Amazon Prime, but we still haven't seen the representation of Gujaratis, a well-known community here in the UK, on television regularly. We will see Punjabis, we see lots and lots of Muslim comedians from the Midlands. Recently there was a show by 2 Bengali comedians, but we're still invisible. That presents 2 problems. One, my generation is what I like to refer to as the last generation, that if we don't do something now, then that's it. It's just going to go, no one's going to care. So it's high time that we present ourselves on television, because I feel like television is still a respected medium. And whilst my YouTube sketches have been supported and, you know, helped me build this amazing career, I feel like television is where I'd like to tell another story or work and give other actors the opportunity to work, you know, in these stories and write these stories. So yeah, that's the dream.